Welcome to the latest episode of Corner Your Market podcast. I'm glad you're here today. And today I have a very special guest. He is actually our very first video guest on our podcast. So Shawn, you have the honor. Any trivia question in the future? Who was the first video guest on Corner Your Market podcast? It's Shawn Richards.
Okay, I'll
I've gotten
take
to
it.
know
Right.
yeah, so I've gotten to know Shawn over the last year through some networking, and we've gotten to know each other. It's been fun getting to know you, Shawn. I know that you are the owner of uh, Blue Sky Business Consulting, a business consulting services here in the Salt Lake area, and you've been doing it for about 17 years. I know one of the reasons why I felt like it would be relevant to talk to you, Shawn, is because we marketing folks get a little bit of tunnel vision when it comes to working with our businesses, our business clients, right? We don't see other parts of the business, and you as a business consultant see various parts of the business. So I just thought a great place to start would be that. But before we get there, let's talk a little about you, Shawn. Maybe a little introduction. What makes you, what makes Shawn Shawn.
What makes Shawn Shawn? That's a good question. Well, first, before I get to all of that stuff, I'll just say thank you for having me on your podcast. I'm really excited. I always enjoy having conversations about business. A little bit about me. I'm married. I have two wonderful daughters. They are in college right now. They're twins. They are our
Oh,
only
okay.
children, but they are fantastic. We're very proud of them. And they are doing some great things in college, and they're hairstylists. So that's why my hair looks so fantastic. And I'm sure that that's why, Silas, you wanted me as your first video guest is because of my hair.
Yeah, there you
I
go.
don't know if anybody's going to be listening to this or not, but I'm mostly bald, and so that's why this is a
Yeah.
humorous thing for
Yeah, if
those
you're
who might.
listening, you got to go to the YouTube channel to actually see Shawn's
That's
hairstyle,
right.
and
Got to actually
don't
see
compare
that.
him to mine though.
I'm a big sports enthusiast. When I'm not engaged with business and helping business owners, I love sports. I love particularly football and baseball. And so at the
Okay.
time that we're recording this, it's February of 24. And so we're just finishing up the football season and
Yeah.
looking ahead here in a couple of weeks to spring training and the baseball season kicking off. So love those sports, and that keeps me busy pretty much year round. But I'm also an avid reader and have a few
Okay.
other interests. I collect baseball cards, which shouldn't surprise too many people. And then I'm also a big fan of the James Bond movie genre there. So I have a few
That's
little
right. I
fun
forgot
little
about
things.
that. You are
Yeah.
like the biggest. You've actually gone on record saying you could take anybody on that trivia, right? In the entire
Oh,
state.
oh, yeah, at least in the state of Utah, but I could even go beyond that and probably hold my own pretty well. So I think it'd be kind of fun.
Wow.
But that's what happens when you get old. You have all these years that you can, accumulate trivial, silly knowledge about something, and James
Yeah.
Bond just happens to be something I kind of latched onto as a teenager. So
Nice. I enjoyed James Bond movies myself when I was
yeah,
growing
they're
up.
fun.
It was fun. So it's kind of diving in a little bit. What are some of the? I mean, I kind of alluded it to a little bit in the intro, but what are some of the challenges? It's 2024. What are some of the challenges a small business faces? I know marketing challenges. I just don't know what other challenges a business faces, like in your
Oh,
experience.
yeah, it's a great question. And particularly as a business is growing and as they're continuing to evolve and move to a scaling model, you'll typically have four areas that continually rear their ugly heads. One of them is the
Okay.
financial part. And that's kind of where marketing fits in, making sure that there's consistent leads, sales are consistent, managing cash flow, you're able to grow and not overspend, but not underspend either, and not get the growth that you need. So anything financial is one of the big hurdles. The second of the four, operational issues,
Oh, okay.
fulfillment. Yeah, if you're a product based company, you're making sure that they're shipping accurately and that you're getting things out timely as quickly as possible. And Amazon has certainly raised the bar for everyone on that
Yeah.
regard. But even if
Yeah.
you're in a service based industry like you and I are, Silas, it's really important to make sure that you're delivering the services that you are promising to deliver and that you're doing so at the highest expectations. And so, operationally, that's really important to have good systems and operations in place. The third hurdle that often comes up and is very closely related to operations, and that's people. You have
Oh, okay.
leadership issues as you continue to grow and you need to start hiring more and more people. You start having some leadership issues where people are maybe not as connected to the company as the initial people you brought in. You're having
Right.
middle management or senior leadership that you have to bring in to help. And that's just part of the scaling process. But that can create some challenges for a lot of folks. And so it's important to have really good, strong leadership skills all the way throughout the company. The fourth one that is, it's not going to surprise you when I say it, but sometimes we don't think about it as much. Emotional well-being is the
Oh,
fourth hurdle that I see
of the
people.
ownership, leadership, or just the
Yeah,
entire
within the
company?
ownership, it's yeah, well, it's all of it. But when we're speaking specifically about the business
Mm,
owners, a lot of what I
yeah.
see are things like burnout, work-life
Oh,
balance is out of whack. They're spending way too much time at work. They built up this nice company, but it's demanding way too much of their time. And their
right.
marriage is struggling. Their relationship with their kids isn't as strong as it could be. Different things. Plus, for some people, they just want to spend a little bit more time doing some hobbies or something.
Yeah.
But that emotional wear and tear that sometimes happens, that's a big deal. And in the more extreme cases, you have some people that really struggle mentally, and suicide and some of those things can come along. And I
Wow.
just hate to see
That's
things like that. And so if a business owner especially can be aware of their own emotional well-being, but also the emotional well-being of their entire company, that's really
right.
important in this day and age. We need to spend more time talking about that, even in a work environment. It used to be that was kind of over here in the personal life, and you didn't mingle too much with the work, but it all affects. They're all
That's a,
interconnected.
one, two, and three, I would have kind of said, okay, Shawn, that's pretty obvious, right? In so many ways, finance, operations, and then leadership. But the
Mm-hmm.
fourth one is also striking to me because I think oftentimes in a business situation, we are asked to put aside our emotions in dealing with the customer or dealing with the client or dealing with an issue, but we're emotional beings, right? We have
Yeah.
emotions up and down, sideways sometimes, depending on who you are, So I get that. So where does your services come in then? How do you, when you're a business consultant, when you come
Mhm.
in to what kind of engagements do these businesses actually take you on for?
You bet. Yeah, primarily it's kind of a let's identify where the biggest pain points are and determine in which of those four categories we're having the most trouble. Where I typically specialize a lot more is in leadership development and helping the C
Okay.
suite as well as other mid level managers and lower level managers, kind of those initial team leaders, those kinds of things, to
Hmm.
really gain a sense of what their own leadership style is, how to
Yeah.
identify it, how to develop it, and then, of course, teaching basic general leadership skills that all leaders need to have. And a lot of
Right.
that
Right.
includes looking carefully at your employees as people, not numbers, and
Yeah.
making sure that
Yeah.
they're feeling included. But that's a lot of where I'm brought in. But a lot of it is business strategy and just overall, hey, what are we tackling with? I have a
Hmm.
very good network, as you know, of people that I can
Yeah.
rely on to help come in and help with specialty areas if necessary. I kind of pitch myself as a jack of all trades, but I'm a master
Okay.
of the one, which is the leadership development. So that's
I
where I
like
get
that.
the love
Jack of all
on.
trades, master of one. That's kind of
Master
cool.
of
That's
one,
kind
yeah.
of cool. Yeah. So, I mean, how long is your engagement usually? Like, how long does it take you to identify their main issues, so to speak? Like 90
The
days, 180
identification,
days?
oh boy, the identification can take, it's very, very quick. It's very, very quick.
Okay.
I
Oh,
have an
it's quick.
assessment. Yeah, it's 20 question assessment. And I just ask them some questions. And I just say, where are you
Okay.
feeling the most pain? Now,
Okay.
sometimes it may take a little bit longer to identify the real source of the pain. Just kind of like when you go to a doctor, and
Right.
sometimes you say, well, I've got this pain in my shoulder here. He or she, the doctor, is going to ask you some questions, but it may take some x-rays, it may take CT
Right.
scans, whatever else to really identify the true problem. And so it's the same thing in a consulting type situation where we're trying to analyze, what are the pain points? What are you experiencing? In some cases, I start to interview other leaders or people,
Okay.
employees within the company to say, hey, what are you seeing? What's your perspective to really identify what is the source of the problem? But it's really
Right.
about it's a constant process of evaluating what's the number one issue that we're having right now. Okay, let's put a plan into place to solve that problem. Okay, we feel like we've solved that. What's next? And then what's next? And
Got it.
it's a
So
constant
when a business owner, like a business owner that might be listening, so when a business owner reaches out or you get in touch with a business owner, I'm sure they have some kind of an inkling that they need help in something, right? Are they very vague on it, or are they like, this is my issue, help me solve it? Or and then have you been in a situation, a follow up to that is, if you've been in a situation where they say, oh, my problem is X, but you go in and you're like, no, 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 your problem is your mental health.
Right.
I don't know.
It's a great question, and the short answer is D, all of the above.
All of the above. Okay.
Interesting. Silas, people are people, and I respect this, but some people are far more introverted. They don't want to share problems. They don't want to look like their business is struggling. But let's be
Right.
honest, no business is running perfectly. Mine certainly isn't. I
Yeah.
constantly am looking at myself, okay, Shawn, what's the number one issue in your own company that you're needing to deal with? But we need to be open about it to the point we don't need to run around with
Yeah.
a discouraged look on our face all the time and let the whole world know that life is challenging. But
Yeah.
you do need to acknowledge with a sense of optimism that yes, a problem does exist and a solution exists. So let's be
Right.
optimistic about our ability to solve it, and then pull in people as necessary to help. You can have advisors, you can have a board of directors, consultants like myself, of course, but other members of the C suite, even family members can help sometimes just to get a sense of, hey, I'm
Yeah.
kind of struggling a little bit. Let's identify where
Yeah.
and let's start working
That's
on
funny because
solutions.
I used to work with a friend. I wouldn't say he was my mentor, but he was a little bit senior in the business. And he used to say, sales solves all problems. I don't know. Sales solves all
It
problems.
does to a degree. It solves a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
cash
To a
flow
degree.
issues.
It solves. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, but it
Yeah.
doesn't always solve the deliverable, and it doesn't always solve refunds if the customer is
Yeah.
not happy, and it
Right.
certainly
Right.
won't
He was
necessarily
also the
address.
guy that said, speaking of refunds, he was also the guy that said, if you encounter an upset customer, throw money at him.
Yeah, and that for a lot of people, money is the driving force in their
Right.
decision making, and
Right.
so that's we just have to acknowledge that
I've
that's
thought
a
about
sad.
his advice I haven't taken it necessarily, but I've always thought about his advice. Like, you know what? It's been, he said that when I used to work with him 20 years ago. So it's been a while. And so I've had some time to think about it, but it's never left me. It's like, oh, yeah, sales does solve a lot of problems. And yeah, if there are
It
problems, you
does.
can throw money at it, so,
Yeah,
so it
if you've
does
got
help.
money and
So,
cash flow coming in, that's a
yeah.
huge hurdle to get over.
So how do business owners react when you come back to them with, hey, this is your problem and here's what I can do to solve it? I mean, there could be changes they have to personally make. There might be org changes, staff changes. How do they typically react with that? Is it hard for them?
In some cases, yes, it really depends on how willing they are to listen in the first place. To be
Okay.
very blunt, I don't usually, if I can tell that they're resistant to it, if I have to twist their arm, they're not a good fit for me. And I'll
Right.
usually just say, well, here's a couple of things for you to kind of maybe think about or maybe work on. And then I let them be on their way.
Right.
I choose to work with clients who are anxious to improve, that they're coachable and teachable, and that they want to learn, that they want to make improvements, not just for themselves personally, but for the company as
Right.
an entity and every person within the company as an individual.
Yeah.
All of that is really important to me as part of my core values, and that's important for them in my view. And so if we're not properly aligned, I'm going to very gently say, maybe you got to talk to someone over here. Maybe they can help you a little bit better with what
Yeah.
you want
I'm
to work.
kind of at that point in my career too, in our business as well, where we're like, we really want to work with people that value our services and
Yeah,
value what we bring to the table, value our strengths, and value
right.
the what we're trying to do. Because we've had situations where people have signed on and paid their 50% deposit and I've never heard from them. I can think of two
Yeah,
clients and they never even asked me for a refund. So I'm like, what
yeah.
in the
Isn't that
world? I mean,
strange?
did they just need a tax deduction that year? I don't know what the deal was.
Lower the profitability a little bit
Yeah.
here. So
Yeah.
it's strange. That's strange.
Very
And
strange.
yet
Yeah.
that's how some people think. And that suggests to me, not to get too deep into it, but that suggests an operational issue. They're
Right.
they're paying the money, but they're not paying attention to it. And you kind of shrug
Yeah.
your shoulders and go, why are you spending the money if you're not planning on using the service?
Yeah.
So
And I've also been in situations where, kind of alluding to what I said earlier, is we've had clients where we've done great marketing work for them, but then their operational challenges and financial challenges has actually handicapped the marketing.
right.
So example is we did a really good campaign for this particular client, but they weren't able to distribute their product as much as they could. And so they ended up getting negative reviews on social. You know what I mean? So we can do a
Exactly. Yeah.
great job doing marketing campaigns and get the marketing strategy right. But if your other parts of your business are not in alignment, then it doesn't work. And one classic case, this is from a few years ago, we ran a very, very strong PPC campaign for a client, but none of the calls were converting to customer. Well, it's because their front desk or their people answering the phone, there was so much turnover on that position that they just didn't know what to do with these calls that were coming in. Do you know what I mean? I mean,
Right.
to me,
Yeah,
that's an operational, kind of like
it is.
staffing operational issue that is really impacting the bottom line. And you can't really blame the marketing agency for that, you know?
That's right.
So that's why
No,
I
and
need
that's
guys like you in my corner.
well, I'm definitely there for you if you run into that with one of your clients. But that's a good example of what can happen where in the financial part of it, including the marketing, everything is humming along pretty nicely and sales are coming
Mhm.
in, or at least the calls are coming in. But the staff isn't ready, the system isn't ready, and quite frankly, the hiring and training in this case, in that example, wasn't right where it needed to be. And it's here, but
Right.
it needs to be here. And that's where business owners can trip up, is that they don't think through that whole process very carefully. In the fulfillment side of it, like we talked about at the beginning, being able to fulfill when you do get orders or when you do have calls coming in or emails or leads or whatever it is, that's really important. You have to
Yeah.
have the system in place. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you at least need to have something that will capture 80, 90% of it. And then you continue to fine tune and make it better.
Yeah. So what's 2024 looking like for businesses? I mean, you have the crystal ball, I think, in Utah, right?
Oh, I wish I did. I could be a mega
Well, I mean,
millionaire
you
if it
do
was.
have the crystal ball because the Packers are going to win the Super Bowl in 2024, the 2024 season, right? You know that.
Well, that's my hope. I'm obviously a
Yeah. Okay.
big Packers fan. They didn't quite make it this year, but hopefully in the 24 season, as we go into next year's playoffs, maybe they'll have a little bit better run there. They had a good run, but it was just a little bit
Yeah.
too short for my taste.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
24 is going to be an interesting year. I always kind of tend to think, and I don't have necessarily data that supports this, but depending on the industry and depending on the business, a lot of businesses, when they get into an election year, like we're having in 24, they kind of hold a little bit because
Right.
their business or their industry is somewhat dependent on who's in the White House and which party, and if it's business friendly or
Hmm.
not, and all those kinds of things. And I'm not here to wax political, but sometimes businesses will take a little bit of a slowdown. So it doesn't surprise me when businesses run into that,
Yeah.
and that can affect the entire economy. I do think that the overall economy is doing really well. I think that for businesses, this is a great time to get going. If you've
Yeah.
thought about starting a business, great time to start a business. If you think that there's some opportunity to grow and scale your business, now is a great time to do that. I'm always one that says, don't let the election year get in the way of business. We can adjust, we
Yeah.
can adapt, but don't worry too much about what's happening in the elections. But I do believe that businesses, I don't know that there's ever been a time when it's better to do business than now.
Right.
Certainly, we've had things like the pandemic and economic downturns, and those are always looming.
Yeah.
But I believe that this is a great time for businesses, and I would
Do you
like to
think, I
see
mean,
businesses.
with all these layoffs happening, I mean, at least in the tech industry, there's layoffs happening, and
Yep.
turnover is going to be an issue for companies, I think. Is hiring going to be difficult? I mean, I mean, I don't know
Hiring
because
will.
yeah.
Yep. And that's why it may be, if you're in the right market, the right mindset, got the right product or service, maybe a good time to start your own business. If you've experienced
Yeah.
a layoff and you're in between, or you're maybe thinking, hey, maybe now's the time to strike out on my own, give it some thought.
Yeah.
Give it some thought.
Yeah. I was just talking to
It's
a
not
friend of mine who
easy.
just, yeah,
Yeah.
I had a friend who just got laid off at eBay, and we were talking on Monday, and I said, "Hey man, this is the time,
Yep.
you've got a decent amount of experience. You know, kids are out of the house. I mean, do it." And he's like,
Yeah.
"Well, I'm not very entrepreneurial." I said, "But man, you are entrepreneurial." So anyway, so
Well, if they
yeah.
can at least
Um,
bridge the gap a little bit, and then if they discover that maybe entrepreneurship and business ownership is not for them, now they know. And so
right,
they've still
right.
gained something through the process. And that experience alone can be really valuable if they get
Yeah,
hired, if they go back to employment status and work for someone else, and they work for a smaller business, they understand. And so they have some
right.
connection there.
That's a good point. So switching gears a little bit on the business consulting side, I mean, obviously there's a lot of business consultants, right? There's a lot of marketing consultants. There's a lot of marketing agencies. For somebody that might be listening, saying, "Hey, I probably need to get a business consultant," what should they look for in a business consultant before they say, "This is the guy I want to work with," or "This is the person I want to work with"?
Excellent question. So there's a couple of things to make sure that we distinguish just a little bit. It's important to distinguish between a consultant, a coach, and a mentor, because a lot of people
Okay.
will match those three together. So just very, very quickly, high level definitions here. A consultant, like myself, is somebody that has specific skill that will come in and teach that skill and help implement a skill within a company. A
Got it.
coach Yeah, a coach is usually somebody that's more individual, and they're going to work with you to help you kind of identify and discover your own barriers and help you get
Mm,
over those barriers. But it's a little more introspective, it's a little bit more personal. A
got it.
mentor is somebody that has specific experience in your area, your industry, your type of business that can kind of lead you along, and they've kind of been there, done that, and they can provide specific advice for your kind of business. But a consultant is usually industry agnostic, and
Got it.
a coach is usually agnostic as well as far as what kind of coaching. A lot of us, of course, we specialize in business or whatnot. So, first of all, identify what it is exactly that you're looking for. If you are looking for more of a consultant to come in and help you solve a specific problem, you clearly have to know what the problem is.
Right.
Now, if you're
Right.
not sure, you can talk to someone like me and say, I just kind of feel like I'm here, there, and I'm missing some things. The assessment that I use can help to identify that. And then we can go to the next steps on whether I'm the right fit. But at the very least, you started to identify more clearly what the challenges are that you're facing. And so when you're looking for a consultant, it seems almost obvious, but don't be afraid to just ask some personality questions too. Is this someone that
Oh,
you can get along with? Is this
right.
someone
That's a
that you
good
feel
point.
like you can take their advice? Because it's amazing how many times we forget that in a coaching, mentoring, consulting type relationship, it's very personal. And so,
Right.
life's too
Yeah,
short
it
to
is
deal with somebody
personal.
you don't
Yeah.
like working with. So, be willing to interview a little bit and talk to different people and just see where the connection is. And also
Right.
make sure that, of course, they've got their knowledge and their skill set, but don't be afraid to look for
Yeah.
somebody that you enjoy being with.
Yeah, you got to enjoy the people you work with. That's a
Yes,
given. I mean, I think yeah, maybe it's a mark of just being in business for so many years, but it's like let's do business with people you actually enjoy being with. Yeah.
very important.
That's a great
Yes.
that's a great example. But how do you parlay that with the three, you identified the four main areas, right? Finance, operations, leadership, and mental health. Would you say that if you're mental health, you just go with a business coach versus a consultant, or how does that work?
It depends. If it's business related that's causing some of that emotional drain,
Got it.
like work life balance, it's like, man, I'm just spending all my time at work. That's a work related issue. Now, if you're having suicidal thoughts or tendencies, you need to get some professional therapy and that kind of help.
Yeah.
So again, you have to identify it. I don't get into that, but I'm more
Yeah.
than willing to talk to somebody and say, "Hey, how's your burnout level? Are you kind of getting burned out with your business?" Yeah, I'm really
Yeah.
tired of it. Okay, well, let's talk. What is it? Is it the business itself? Or are you just kind of tired of that and you just want to try something totally different? Maybe it's time to think about an exit. And what do we do to
Right.
prepare you and the company for an exit? You sell the company or exit out or whatever. Or are you just doing too much? Are you just trying to
Yeah.
take on too much? And do we need to delegate a little bit more effectively? So there's different ways that you can identify from an emotional well-being standpoint how to solve that problem.
How
And
to solve,
definitely,
yeah.
if you're having some more, if you deal with mental illness, discouragement, even beyond discouragement, if it's the depression, bipolar disorder, if you've got suicidal tendencies or thoughts, self harm like cutting, pulling hair out, things like that, really talk to a good
Yeah.
therapist
You
and
need
get some help
professional
there. We
counseling,
we don't want you
medical.
to
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So, I mean, we're talking a lot of good stuff here. What are some resources that you can recommend for our listeners to kind of check out? Is there an assessment that they can take online? Is there a podcast they could listen? Obviously, they're listening to my podcast, so don't recommend another podcast. But books,
Yeah,
like some of the books I've read over the years that have been very helpful. There's like the EOS book. What's that called? Traction.
direction. Yep, good
Get
book.
a grip. There's a couple of those. I don't know if you have anything right off the top of your head that you could recommend for the listening
Sure.
audience.
Yeah, I'm the type that if it's coming to a book, I'm going to recommend, get the word out here. I'm going to recommend a book by Liz Wiseman called
Okay.
Multipliers. And it's a
Oh,
great leadership book. It's about how to multiply the efforts of your people and to get more
okay.
out of your company. And it's an outstanding book. She's a very, very knowledgeable, experienced executive that really
Okay.
understands people and understands leadership. And so I'm a big fan of hers. So that's a great book that I would recommend that you take a look at. Not to
And
be
it's
too
called
self-serving,
Multiplier, right?
called Multipliers, right? So, and not to
Okay.
be too self-serving, but I host a podcast as well called Team Engagement Podcast,
Yes.
and that's all about leadership and teams. And so
And
you're kind
I've
enough to
listened
be
to that
around.
podcast. I can vouch for it. It's a great podcast. I think
Thank
for
you.
leadership and teams, you guys need to listen to Sean's podcast.
But there are a lot of resources out there, and there are big companies, big research companies like McKinsey. Harvard does some work. Gallup,
Hmm.
if you're familiar with Gallup polls and whatnot, they do a lot of research into the workplace. And a
Okay.
lot of the philosophies that I have developed, I've pulled from Gallup and the work that they've done.
Okay.
So
Got
there's a
it.
lot of really good studies out there, a lot of really good information that can help steer you as the business owner in how you can improve your business and improve your own well-being overall.
Right. Right. Yeah, there are a lot of a lot of business books to read, obviously, but yeah, for me, the traction made a big difference in our business in 2021. I read Get a Grip after that. That made a big difference as well. So I'm gonna have to check out this Multiplier book. See,
Yeah,
get a copy of that and see how that goes.
yeah, good book.
Um, so I know you already mentioned your podcast. Can you outline some of the ways in which people can get a hold of you, Sean? I mean,
Sure.
you know, so
I'm very busy on LinkedIn. And so
okay,
Shawn J. Richards is where you can look for me. Blue Sky
okay,
Business Consulting. I have presence. I have a business page on LinkedIn as well as a personal profile as well. So you're welcome to
okay,
contact me there. You can also go to my website, Blue Sky Biz, B-I-Z, consulting.com. And of
okay,
course, check out the Team Engagement Podcast. Those are some great ways to get a hold of me.
okay. And I will drop all of those links in the show notes, so
Perfect.
people can take a look at that. Unfortunately, YouTube doesn't really trust me yet, so I can't put a live link in my YouTube video show notes yet. But
Yes,
I'll
we'll get
definitely
there.
put it in the audio show notes. So for those of you that look on the YouTube and say, "Where's the show notes? Where's the link?" I'm like, dude, be patient, man. I'm trying to build credibility here.
One
So
step at
yeah.
a time,
So
right?
hey, Sean, we're coming up on our limit here, so I really want to thank you for taking the time to join my podcast. I think it's been a great episode. We talked about some really good stuff. I think any
Yeah.
business owner or executive that's listening, I think there's some great resources that are available to that person based on this podcast to kind of access and see what they can do to help their business. So, with that, any last words? Any last any dad joke? I mean, you're a dad, man, or
Yeah, I'm always cracking the dad jokes, but I don't know that I've got one ready for you. I'll just say thank you so much for letting me be on
yeah.
the podcast. This has been a lot of fun.
All right. Thank you very much. Well, we'll catch you next time.
Sounds good.